translate, and it's very much about puns with words and recurring characters and recurring words. And also this novel, although I chose an easy passage because otherwise it wouldn't have been easy to understand, but this novel is all about repetition and alliteration, and that's the sort of stuff I like to translate best because it's what appeals most to the way my brain is, probably. And I don't know, I happened to translate some young adult literature, and short example of Twilight too, the Twilight Saga, the last volume. Yeah, I was one of the 5 translators of the last book of the saga, and also some chick lit. But I really hate translating that stuff because it's so poorly written and poorly edited that really you have to rewrite it from scratch, and as I'm not a writer, I am a translator. I prefer having to translate some books who are stylistically more challenging, and my translation style is faithful. And before changing something that has been decided by the author, I try all possible solutions because I believe that the translation should be the closest possible as the original. And that's maybe my take on translation is this, although some Italian editors, especially in the most commercial publishing houses, do not share the view, and they believe readers are stupid and we have to make things easy for them. So, oh my God, what is this difficult word? Let's change it. And so that's when usually things become tough.
That actually ties really well into the guidelines for the translation production process, which you sent me. But before reading any part of this, do you want to explain how did the union come about, and what is the function of the Translators Union in Italy?
Yeah, translation was a very lonely profession up until 10 years ago. Then the internet changed everything. We all met in a mailing list on Yahoo groups, and in the beginning, in 2000, there was just 200 of us. Now the mailing list has 3,000 members. In 2003, we decided that as there was a union for technical translators, but there was nothing for literary translators, which had a different taxing system from the government, we decided to create it from scratch and to enter in the writers' union because they are the ones that have our same financial taxing system from the government. So we built a section in there. Now we have reached, after 8 years, 200 members. And what we're trying to do is to, permanent education. So once a year we have a seminar for members to discuss about translation and to do some update with prominent teachers and guests. And of course we are fighting for a better wage because our wage is ridiculous. It's like $17 per page, minus taxes at the top of the career. So you can imagine how little it is. And of course we have a lot of problems with dumping, with younger colleagues accepting to work for free and to work for ridiculous wages. So we try to get them all to join the union so we can all fight for a good wage, and in order that nobody has to work for free or for a ridiculous wage. And then we have now helped the government to build a translators' house in Rome that will be hosting foreign translators, and that is already hosting a series of conferences on translation with translators and their authors and so on and so forth. And these guidelines especially is my idea and came out from my thoughts on the ethics of translation, because I think that translating is a huge responsibility you have with your author, with your culture, and with the readers. And therefore translation has to imply an ethical reflection. It's not an automatic action. And therefore in the yearly seminars I brought up this topic, and one of the seminars we did in 2009 was at the University of Bologna. It was 3 translators who were also revisers, and 3 editors who were also revisers, and we had all worked together. So we spent a whole day discussing together the best practices. And I used as a base a nice book that came out with with Dolki Archive Press. It's called Translation in Practice, and it's the chronicle of a similar thing they did in Britain 2 or 3 years ago. So on that base, we adapted it to the Italian context, and these best practices we came out with are the result of that day of discussion we had with these friendly editors. Of course, we chose the ones that are more respectable of translators, the ones that are less commercials, the ones who are translators themselves, so they can relate to our kind of problems. But of course, later on, we went to a book fair and we managed to invite also some bigger editors, but they managed to skirt the problem very brilliantly, because translators are perceived as a problem and as a cost rather than as a value and as a richness. So we are also fighting, because nobody knows about us. So one of the things I always say is we have to educate our clients, because they don't know anything about translation, about what it is, about what it implies. They don't know the mental mechanisms that are behind translation. And so we tried with these best practices to make them, for instance, understand that not everyone can translate every book, that you have to choose the best translator for each book, and it doesn't mean that a good translator can translate anything, because every book has its translator and every translator has its book. And so what we maintain is that every time they have to give out a book in translation, they should like call 3 or 4 translators and have a test and see who's the best, because it's a matter of voice. And you could be the best translator in the world, but if that book's voice is not right for your kind of brain, then you're not the best possible translator for that book. And in order to have the better translation, you have to get the best translator. And we are trying to get publishers to understand this, and to understand that for the time we take to translate a book, we need a better wage. And of course, we need to be able to confront with them the process of editing and revision, which doesn't always take place because our market is very fast-paced. So sometimes we don't even get to see the galleys, and they like change half of our translation without telling us, and then you get the book and you go like, oh my god, what is this? And usually it's lowered down, it's the quality, everything that is difficult is sort of like, you know, brought down. And so these guidelines basically try to promote a more respectful relationship, and also for the translators, of course, because instead of complaining all the time, we try to build something more constructive and to propose something in a positive way instead of complaining. So in these guidelines, there are also many actions that the translation is supposed to do in order to have a good translation and in order to behave properly with the editor.
Right. There are 2 real quickly, a couple of quick things on the set that were interesting. One being that you talk a lot about this having a reviser, which seems to be a separate position from an editor, correct?
Depends.
Oh, it depends. Okay.
In small publishing houses, it might be the same person.
Okay.
In bigger publishing houses, usually it is not the same person.
It's interesting that you have 2 ones that I'll read real quickly. Point 5 being, all translators, even the very best, need to be assisted by an expert reviser who will correct their work against the source text. The reviser should preferably have the necessary language skills to understand the source text. Should this not be the case, close cooperation with the translator is even more essential. And then the one that I like the most, where is it? 6. Ideally, the reviser should neither retranslate nor impose their own personal linguistic style. Before intervening on any sentence, they should ask themselves not so much what can be improved as what must be improved, which is a very nice way of putting that kind of...
Yeah, because the translator is an author.
Mm-hmm.
So the correct relationship between a reviser and a translator is I have to respect his or her taste, because it's a matter of hearing, it's a matter of taste. Translation is not mathematics. Yes, of course, there's only one way to translate, it's raining cats and dogs. But the rest of the sentence can be expressed, the sentence that is around it can be expressed in many ways, and that's what the reviser has to respect. Whereas the translator has to be modest enough to accept the corrections without being, stubborn or self-conscious and refusing them. So the ideal relationship is cooperation, basically.
Very interesting. We could go on for a while because I have other questions for you, but we should probably stop there. And rather than taking questions, because it gets very awkward with multiple people up here, I thought what we'd do instead is that everyone will stay here, and if you have any questions, come up and individually ask each one of the authors, and we can hang out for a few minutes and answer any questions. But thank you all for coming. Thank you, DW, for driving everyone across the stage.